The Blue Jays need a new home. The MLS Knockout Round is happening next week. Oh, and football, American and Canadian, are starting back up as well. We're going to talk about that. The NHL awards and COVID's effect on the UFC. All coming up on this episode of the Home Turf Podcast. And welcome everybody to the third episode of the Home Turf Podcast. For those who don't know, my name is Brad, and I am the host throughout this podcast. So we're going to start off today with a Canadian crisis in baseball. I use the word crisis again because this is what it's become as of the day I'm recording. And that's that the Blue Jays have not found a home yet. They're like, where are they going to play their home games, home in quotation marks? So this all began on the 18th of July when the federal government denied the Blue Jays access to playing home games in Toronto, even though that same day, Premier Doug Ford of Ontario said, yep, they have the AOK from the provincial government, and yep, they have the AOK from the municipal government, so that would be the city of Toronto. And so the biggest hurdle that the federal government couldn't, I guess, get through or jump through was it was the Americans and the Blue Jays coming back. It was them crossing the border multiple times, and then teams would stay, or even the Jays would stay 3 to 4 days, and then, they'd be back on the road. They'd be going back to the States, and they'd be going to some hot spots. So for the federal government of Canada to deny the Blue Jays their, not their right, but to deny them their, I guess, number one option of playing games in Toronto, it's not a good thing for the ball club. In a country perspective, it is good for Canada. So, it keeps people safe. It really just helps the population just maintain the spread of COVID. Yes, you could say as a baseball fan, and I kind of made this connection too when it first came out. I was very angry when this first came out. I understood, but I was very, very angry at the federal government. But after thinking about it over a couple of days, I understand and I respect the decision, and I think it was the best decision. It's just a hard pill to swallow if you're a Canadian baseball fan. So with that said, now the Jays have to keep their players in quarantine, and the American teams have to keep their players in quarantine as well. So that you could say, yes, some players could leave the bubble, but they'd get a massive fine. But I don't think that would have happened, and I don't think it's going to happen wherever the Jays wind up. But that was another hurdle for the federal government. So, and this is the last time, a couple days ago, that you'll see Toronto in their home ballpark of the Rogers Centre until April 8th of next year. That is a long, long time. And that's if COVID's under control and the Jays are allowed to play games in their home ballpark. Because if the situation stays the same in the States, or if it gets worse up here in Canada, it's going to be a problem. So I think, though, everything, hopefully, when you look at the news and everything with COVID, hopefully things will kind of be able to calm down a bit. But again, it's just an if. And with the MLB just announcing today that the teams in the playoffs are going to go from 10 to 16, that is also fantastic for baseball. And it could be Toronto could revisit the stadium plan in October if they make the playoffs. So that is a possibility. Now that we've gotten, okay, Toronto's not playing in Toronto, let's go with where are they going to go? Who are they going to, what stadium are they going to use? Well, a couple days after, they started talking about Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh was a a logical choice because Ben Charrington, he was one of the scouts for the Blue Jays. I remember, and he has a great relationship with Blue Jays front office, and so they thought they had a deal. And then the next day, or actually no, not the next day, the same day, the state of Pennsylvania said, not doing it. So now there's another roadblock. And when you watch games on TV and you listen to American media talking about it, they just feel awful for the Blue Jays, and they would not want to be in their shoes. And I just have to credit these guys, these players, these coaches, everybody, and they are going to have to play a full season without being able to play in their home ballpark when everyone else gets to, and that's really sad. So where could they go after this? Well, I read today that the state of Maryland is in talks with the Blue Jays about letting them use Camden Yards in Baltimore as their home ballpark. They have the okay from the Orioles franchise. They just need the okay from the Maryland government. So if that works, then that's where Toronto will be. Now, it looks like to me that once the Jays go to Washington, they're going to be staying there for 4 because they had a home and home. So what's going to happen, it looks like, is that the Blue Jays are going to go be their home team for the last 2 games. And there's also going to be a home and home with New York, where Toronto will just stay with New York against the Yankees. So here's some other places if Camden Yards isn't the choice to be, or if the state says no, then here's some other ones. There's always talk of Buffalo, Salin Field in Buffalo. It's a minor league stadium. They have to redo the lights, and they also have to just kind of, the clubhouses aren't major league. They're not to major league caliber. So Buffalo is a choice. You also have Dunedin. Dunedin probably would be a good choice for them if there wasn't a COVID outbreak in Florida, as bad as it is, because it's a major league. They have major league fields there. They have multiple clubhouses that you can quarantine players in, and you can keep everybody safe. The field has excellent lighting. It's been renovated, and it was kind of coincidence that there would be a pandemic and there would have a brand new ball stadium that you may have to play in throughout the season. So there's that. And then there's always the option of not having any home games, just playing all on the road. That would be just awful for a ball player. So unfortunately, there is no answer to this yet. It looks like we could have an answer within the coming days. Hopefully we have one sooner rather than later, for baseball fans in Canada and just baseball fans in general, because it probably doesn't bother American baseball fans as much as it does Canadian baseball fans. I know some people were tweeting like, boycott the Jays this year, if they don't want to represent Canada. It's not their decision. If the government says no, then they can't do it. And for me, I will support them no matter where they go. And, they're Canada's team no matter where they play. They did play in the States this year, which is looking like that's what's going to happen. They are Canada's team. Just because they're playing in another field doesn't mean that they're not Canada's team. It's the Toronto Blue Jays, not the Pittsburgh Blue Jays or the Baltimore Blue Jays. It's none of that. So suck it up to those who say boycott the Jays. Just because they're playing in the States doesn't mean there's a Canadian team. So with that, we're going to move on after a quick break. And we're going to be talking about, I know that last week was my prediction show. But with the MLS and its knockout round starting next week, I'm going to just do another prediction just because I love doing them. And they're so much fun to do. So we're going to go round by round with the knockout rounds in the MLS coming up after this little break. All right, so next week begins the round of 16 for the MLS's Back tournament. So we're just going to go over quickly who the teams moving on will be. While recording this episode, there are still a couple matches happening. Right now, it is Houston. They're playing right now, and they're up 1-0. So it looks like if Houston keeps this, they will be in. However, they cannot go higher than where they are. So they will remain in third. So here are the 16 teams that will go through. Orlando, Montreal, San Jose, Real Salt Lake, Columbus, Minnesota, Philadelphia, New England, TFC, Vancouver, Sporting, Houston, Seattle, LAFC, Portland, and Cincinnati. So after you look at their seedings in their group, how they did, here's how the matchups look for the round of 16. So the first quarterfinal will be San Jose against Real Salt Lake, Columbus against Minnesota, Philadelphia against the New England Revolution. TFC will be playing against the third place team from Group A or B, whoever places higher. That looks like Vancouver. Sporting will be against the team who has the highest amount of points between third place in B and F, which looks like Houston. Seattle will be facing F2, which will probably be LAFC. F1 will go against Cincinnati, which should be Portland, and then Orlando against Montreal. So let's dive right in. I think San Jose is going to beat Salt Lake. Columbus is going to beat Minnesota. Toronto should beat Vancouver, and they'll be going up against the winner of Portland and Cincinnati. So I think Portland has it easily. Cincinnati, very impressive this year in this tournament, but Portland will win out. Seattle will be beating LAFC, and I have them going up against, in the quarterfinal, I have them going up against Montreal. I did not like Orlando City's last game. I think they could have beaten Philadelphia Union. I think they just settled for a tie, and I think that hurts them. And Montreal, they had a bad start. They had two tough teams. They beat out DC United, and they went through in third. I think they have a fire under their bellies. I think Montreal is going to beat... I think Montreal is going to beat Orlando. So that would leave New England. I think they're going to win their game against Philadelphia Union. What Bruce Arena has done with the Revolution is spectacular. And I know some people probably thought I was dumb for picking Sporting to win their group. Turns out I was right after a couple hard losses, or a couple hard games. But I think that Sporting has calmed down and they've gotten used to the play. So I think that Sporting will beat Houston. So that leaves quarterfinal matchups like this: San Jose against Columbus, TFC against Portland, Seattle against Montreal, and New England against Sporting. So we'll go with the first one, San Jose against Columbus. I have Columbus beating out. Columbus was a team that I predicted in my last episode, if you saw, or if you listened, not saw, but if you listened, that I thought Columbus was going to go 0-3, 0 points. They'd be out. Turns out they went the opposite. They went 3-0, 9 points. Best team in the tournament. The next matchup, TFC against Portland. I'm sorry, TFC, but this is as far as you go. Portland is much better, and they were... Seattle against Montreal. Again, Montreal, this is where you end. Impressive run up to this far. Comparing your start, Seattle's just too good. And then New England against Sporting. I have Sporting going through. I like Sporting too much for them to lose. But that one's kind of a toss-up because I do like New England and I like how Bruce Arena has his team. So that leaves a semifinal of Columbus against Sporting and Seattle against Portland. Hard semifinal matchup. So moving on to the final, from the first semifinal will be Columbus over Sporting. Columbus to me just looks like a team that's unbeatable. You know, they're just too good, and they impressed me so much this tournament. I think the break was really good for them, and I just think that Columbus is finals bound at this point. And the other semifinal, Seattle against Portland, tough semifinal for both teams. And I think the defending champions lose. I think they'll go on to play the third place game. So that leaves a final of Columbus and Portland. And I think out of everything, I had Portland initially to win. I'm looking at it now and I am saying no. I'm saying Columbus is just too good. I think Columbus is going to win the entire tournament, securing them a place in the playoffs. So it's, to me, Columbus all the way. If you disagree, don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Message us, like us, interact with us. Tell me why I'm wrong. Tell me why I'm right. Or just say, this was complete god-awful crap. And, here's the reasons why. So that, that's how I view MLS. Yours might differ. Please tell me, and we'll talk about it. So from one type of football to the next, we're going to be going through the CFL's return, and we're also going to talk about the NFL return. There have been a lot of developments in the NFL's return to play, or the NFL season resuming. There's been a lot of news, and we're going to talk about that coming up next. So we're going to be talking about pigskin now. We're going to talk about the CFL and the NFL and their new seasons just about to begin. Now, let's start with the NFL, because there's been a lot of news this week with the NFL. So, if you saw a couple days ago, fans are not going to be allowed in New York Giants, New York Jets games this year. Zero, zip, nada, no fans. And that is Governor Andrew Cuomo saying that they're not allowed. Now, but others will be allowed to have fans. Well, it's the teams allowing them to have fans, but only with masks on. So will we see this trend continue? Or, is this all we're going to see? With training camps opening up sooner rather than later, I think this is a trend we're going to see. It also depends on the state and how well they're getting through COVID. So for me, I think what New York has done is the best scenario. I think you're endangering people's lives by saying, yes, you can come in, but with masks. But as we've seen here in Canada and in States, there are some people who don't want to wear masks. And again, if you have medical conditions, that's fine. But for those that don't, because they say it kind of, it not takes away their freedom, but it's a I don't know what you want to call it. It's just I guess it's a minor inconvenience at best for everybody, but there are some people that push it way more than it is, and that's all I'm going to say about it, because I could talk about a whole podcast about masks and why you need to wear them, but we're not going to talk about that today. So, I think the trend will continue. You're going to see some teams saying yes with masks, no, none at all. And you may even see some teams saying, yeah, but we'll do 50% occupancy, no masks. You could do that, but I think we're going to see a trend continue. And another trend or another thought that the NFL may be looking at, although I don't think they're going to, are hub cities. I don't think they're looking at it because the NFL is too big for a hub city. There's so much equipment. There's just too much going on with the NFL to have a hub city. All those teams in like two cities would be a nightmare. It'd be just a nightmare. So you're not going to see it. I think the best course of action for the NFL, yes, you're going to be losing a lot of money, but no fans inside the ballpark or the football field. You may be allowed to have them outside tailgating, but again, that's at their own risk. So if they want to do that, let them go, let them do it. So going from the fan perspective, we're going to go to the player perspective. And if it wasn't this week, it was last week I read on the NFL app that there is a possible virus exposure between players because of social distancing measures, and it can't be met. Like when you're across the field on the sidelines, that's okay, yes, but on the field, along with any other sport, it's not just football. But with football, they're huddled and they're like pretty much face to face. You could probably just I don't know, it's probably a couple inches, it's not very much. So with that, it's if the player has it, and let's say they haven't been tested that game, or they've tested and it's come back negative, and since that negative they've got it, or they have it and the test hasn't been able to reach it, it can expose some holes in the NFL's plan, and it can also just make a lot of players sick. And some NFL players are big guys. They're big. So, and if you have obesity, again, COVID, you don't want COVID because it's just going to run through it's just going to destroy your body. You might not die from it, but you'll have some pretty bad side effects after and during. So with that, they are trying to implement a protective, kind of like a mask, where it goes over the face mask, over where their mouth and nose are, and it's attached to not the stems of the helmet, but what covers the face mask, So that, I think that's a good idea. That's a start. Players have gloves on. They don't have to worry about that. The quarterbacks have their own towels, stuff like that. They just have to be careful with the water bottles and stuff like that. But again, that stuff is pretty good. You can do that. So that's all with the NFL. And there'll be more to come with that as news comes out and as training camps go further. There's also no preseason games, zero zilch, nada. No preseason games, so that way you're going to be seeing, like you have in baseball, you're going to be seeing inter-squad games. You're going to be seeing a lot of just players split in half and playing with their own team. Let's say that. So from the NFL, we're going to go again north of border here in Canada, and we're going to talk about the CFL. Now, the CFL, the Premier of Manitoba, has offered the CFL $2.5 million. And just a couple days ago, the CFL has said that Winnipeg will be the hub city for the 2020 season. Now, I guess you had to buy your way in to become the hub city, because I don't think Winnipeg would have been the best choice. Again, I think maybe BC would have been a nice place to be. With Ottawa, with the news coming out in Ottawa that there's a lot of COVID testing coming out in there. Toronto, it's too busy. You're going to have the NHL there. It's going to be too busy. And then Edmonton, again, you have the NHL there. Calgary, maybe. But maybe BC would be a good place to be. It doesn't get as cold, and it's a dome stadium. So for the CFL rather than the NFL, it's more doable to do a hub city because there's only 8 teams. And players are allowed to opt out of the season without any penalty, which is also very nice. So you could do, even if you want to do, like, let's say Winnipeg, yes, you're going to be a hub city for, let's say, the West, and you can do an Eastern hub city, where you can do, you can say, okay, Winnipeg, you can be in the East, and you can do a West hub city like, the NHL is doing. You can do that, or you can do what, baseball is doing and just have empty stadiums, sorry. So I think a hub city for the CFL, it's a good thing, and it's also a bad thing. Again, with all the equipment, But the city of Winnipeg is. I don't think it was the right decision. I think money kind of talked, and money allowed them to become. The host city or the hub city of the 2020 CFL season. So, unfortunately, that's what we have to deal with as CFL fans. But that's okay. We'll have to suck it up as we go. At least we'll have football to watch. But it is what it is. But I think they could have made a better decision. Yes, the season starts very soon, but they still had time to do it. And even if they didn't make up their mind right at this time, or let's say after training camp ended, they could still do in empty stadiums. And if they decide, hey, it's not working, then they can adapt. That would have been hard to do. So they still had time, but I understand why they made this decision as quickly as they did. But they had more time, and I think this was a decision. It was top 3, but it wasn't the best decision for the CFL. So over the past week, the NHL awards, the finalists have been named. We're going to go through each award. We're going to go one by one through the nominees. We're going to tell you guys who I think is going to win each award and why. And then for all the other nominees, we're just going to give you some information as to why they were nominated. So coming up after a short break is the NHL awards and what I think, or who I think, is going to win. So it is award season for the NHL, and we're going to start off with the best coach in the league, the Jack Adams Award. So here are the 3 nominees. You got Bruce Cassidy from the Boston Bruins, John Tortorella, or Torts as I like to call him, and as a lot of other people like to call him, from the Columbus Blue Jackets, and Alain Vigneault from Philly. So let's start going down the list, and then I'll tell you who I think is going to win. So Bruce Cassidy. What Bruce Cassidy has done with the Boston Bruins after Claude Julien was fired is nothing short of spectacular. When Claude Julien was fired, that same season they made it to the playoffs. They played Ottawa, they lost. Then they go on to an Eastern Conference final run and then a Stanley Cup final run, which they ultimately lose to St. Louis. What Bruce Cassidy has done is made Boston a team you do not want to face. If you have your schedule and you see Boston coming up, you're scared. And if you're playing in Boston, you're even more scared because Boston is just a horrible place to play. It looks like on TV. And, Leaf fans can probably back me up on that. They've seen too many collapses of Toronto in Boston. But that's enough from the Leaf digging today. So John Tortorella in Columbus, what he's done this year is great. John Tortorella is a great coach. He's a little rough around the edges. He's set in his ways. He's just, he doesn't hold back when he talks. I remember when he coached Vancouver for that year, and he was just when he went and wanted to go beat up Calgary's head coach. I can't remember who it was, but that was just, it's funny, but then again, it's also just crazy because this guy just doesn't have a moral compass. He just doesn't he can't accept that someone else started a line brawl against his team. But Columbus this year has had a really rough year, and the fact that they made it to the playoffs as high as they did is nothing short of spectacular. With Torts this year, they've making it pretty far to where they could beat Toronto. They could beat them. If you listened last week, I don't think they do, but that's a story for another day. Columbus had a slow start. They had a horrible injury-plagued season and what he's done with them, how he's coached the young guys, and a little bit of lady luck too. They've had a great season. And last but not least is, I think, the winner of the Jack Adams 2020 award, and that's Alain Vigneault, and here's why. Philadelphia has always been a team that have had a hard time just getting into the playoffs. As far as I can remember, up until after 2010, Philadelphia has had a hard time making it to the playoffs. There are years they barely get in, and then there are years where they barely miss out or they just miss out entirely. So I think Alain Vigneault wins because he's just turned this team around to a cup contender. And if you listen to the last episode, I picked Philly out of the East. Philly's going to the cup final. I believe in Alain Vigneault and the Philadelphia Flyers that much. Now with Carter Hart being injured, it's a little hard to see it, but I think Hart will get back, and they'll be able to win their first round series. So I think Alain Vigneault wins for that reason. And another thing you have to remember about Alain Vigneault is Alain Vigneault has made it to two Stanley Cup finals with two different teams. Vancouver in 2010 and New York in 2012. So, not 2012, 2014, I believe, sorry. So, Alain Vigneault has the cup. He knows how to get to a cup. So, he fell short, but he has the knowledge. And I'd rather have that in a coach than anything else. You could say the same thing about Torts, Bruce Cassidy. He's still new, but he will win one day. So, with that, we're going to move on to the Selke. And this is the best defensive forward in the league. Now, the three nominees this year are Patrice Bergeron, no surprise, from Boston, Ryan O'Reilly, last year's winner from St. Louis, and Sean Couturier from Philadelphia. So let's look at Patrice Bergeron first. He played in 61 games this year, scored 31 goals, 25 assists for a total of 56 points. His plus-minus, plus 23. This is the 9th consecutive season he's been nominated. Boston led the league in goals allowed this year, which Patrice has helped with that. Bergeron has had 750 face-off wins this year and was fourth in face-off winning percentages, and he was third in defensive zone face-off winning percentage. Now Ryan O'Reilly, second nominee, played in 71 games, 12 goals, 49 assists, 61 points, plus-minus of plus 11. This is his second straight season nominated. Again, he won last year. He averaged the most time on ice for the Blues. He led the league again. He led it last year. He led it again this year with face-off wins with 880. This is an insane amount of face-off wins. And he was also the first in defensive zone face-off in this year. And he is second on his team with shorthanded ice time. Now, the third and final nominee is Sean Couturier. And Sean Couturier had 69 games. He had 22 goals, 37 assists for a total of 59 points, and it was a plus 21. So he led the league this year in faceoff winning percentage. He was third in defensive zone faceoff winning percentage, and this is his second time nominated as well. And he's looking to become the third Flyers player to win the award since Dave Poulin. Now, who's going to win this award? For those who are probably going to say Patrice Bergeron, I think you're wrong, and I think you're wrong because he didn't play as much as the other two, but he is one of the greatest two-way players in the game. But I think this year, Ryan O'Reilly wins back-to-back. The reasons why he was nominated this year when doing research for this episode, every stat that I looked at, every reason I saw Ryan O'Reilly's name, or every category I saw his name at the top of the list, it was just everything just outranked. Second shorthanded ice time, leading the league in faceoff wins, averaging the most time on ice, and he was runner-up last year. That kind of helps, but Ryan O'Reilly is a guy who he's just a gritty player. He plays hard every night, and he has just a great defensive awareness that, yes, Patrice Bergeron and Sean Couturier have, but I think this year Ryan O'Reilly had the most defensive strategy, or the most defensive mindedness in the game this year. So next up, it's going to be the NHL's award for the best rookie. So the Calder Trophy. Nominees this year are Quinn Hughes, not Jack Hughes, sorry, of the Vancouver Canucks, Cale Makar of the Colorado Avalanche, and Dominic Kubalik of the Chicago Blackhawks. So let's start with Hughesy. He played in 68 games, 8 goals, 45 assists, 53 minus 10, which isn't bad. So this is why he was nominated. He runs Vancouver's offense, and he's only 20 years of age. This kid is going to be good when he hits his prime. He led the rookie scoring race, and he's third since the third rookie to lead third defenseman, to lead the scoring race since 1966-67. The other two players have been Brian Leetch and Bobby Orr. He scored the most points by any rookie defenseman since Nick Lindstrom tallied 60 points in his rookie season. Now the next nominee is Cale Makar. He played in 57 games, 12 goals, 38 assists, 50 points, plus 12. So he would have been Ottawa's D-man if Ottawa decided to give the Brady Tkachuk pick to Colorado. But anyways, that's not what happened. He's on the first defensive pairing, and he's on a line with Nathan McKinnon, Gabe Landeskog, and Mikko Rantanen. So obviously he'd be a plus 10, or plus 12, sorry. He was the Hobie Baker Award for the best collegiate athlete in the NCAA. The kid can run an offense too. He has great offensive potential. His defensive side is fantastic. He and Quinn Hughes are the top 1-2. We're going to get into who wins in just a second, but we have to talk about the third and final, which is Dominic Kubalik. He played in 68 games, 30 goals, 16 assists, and 46 points. He was a plus 2. So beside Kane and Taves, he led all Blackhawk players in scoring. He leads all rookies in goals with 30. And he has tied Artemi Panarin as Chicago's Calder nominees for goals by a rookie, and passed Kane by 9. So when Kane was nominated for the Calder, Kane only had 21 goals. And he tied Artemi Panarin when Panarin was up for the Calder with 30 goals. That is insane. He had a great, outstanding year. One of the guys that Chicago is going to be keeping, and I think that Chicago is going to they're going to have to build their team around this guy. Kubalik is a fantastic, fantastic goal scorer. Probably the next Patty Kane for Chicago. So who wins? I gotta give it to Hughes. Quinn Hughes he runs the offense like nobody. He has the most points as the defenseman this year, which is kind of what this award has become, or not what this award has become. Sorry, that's the Norris, but. When you look at his offensive stats, his defensive stats, his power plays, penalty kill, Quinn Hughes is all around not much, but Quinn Hughes is the better player. So now, without further ado, we're going to talk about the Norris, so the best defenseman. So the nominees are John Carlson from the Washington Capitals, Victor Hedman from Tampa Bay, and Roman Josi from Nashville. So let's start with Carlson. Carlson played in 69 games, 15 goals, 60 assists, 75 points, 12 plus minus, so plus 12. So he led all D-men in goals and scoring this year. He joins Bobby Orr, Dennis Potvin, Paul Coffey, and Al McInnes to reach 40 points in 29 or fewer games this year. John Carlson, I remember watching on TV on highlight shows, John Carlson scored again. John Carlson scored again. How? This guy was just lighting it up. He had 15 goals is just insane for a guy like John Carlson, because he is more of a stay-at-home defenseman, more of a defensive defenseman, and he likes to pass the puck. So Victor Hedman, is the next nominee. He played in 66 games, 11 goals, 44 assists, 55 points, and he finished with a plus 27 rating. He finished fourth on the Lightning in points, and he was top 5 among all D-men in goals for. I think Victor Hedman gets a nod this year because of his reputation, but he, like the Tampa Bay Lightning, had a slow start this year. Tampa Bay, slow start, slow getting out of the gate, but I think the reason why he gets the nod is because of, he is a very good defender, but I don't think he was as good as he has been. And Roman Josi, he played in 69 games, 16 goals, 49 assists, 65 points, and 22 plus minus rating. Roman Josi is one of the best transition players in the game, by far. And I think that's why he is nominated for this award. And he's the only D-man to be in, when you look at transition, he's the only D-man in the entire NHL who is in the top 75 in carry-ins. All other people on that list, you can look at that list, are forwards. So I think the winner of this is going to be Roman Josi, not because of his offensive. Yes, he did produce offensively, great offensive numbers this year for Roman Josi, but his transition game. He can play offense and he can play defense. And the Norris Trophy is about defense, but it has become about offense as well. You've seen it with Erik Karlsson. You've seen it with Brent Burns. You've seen it with Victor Hedman. It's points-based, but there should be some defense in it because it is an award for defensemen. So speaking of defense, we're going to go with the last line of defense with the goalies. So the Vezina Trophy. Nominees this year are Connor Hellebuyck, Tuukka Rask, Andrei Vasilevskiy. This one should be a no-brainer about who's going to win, but we're going to go through all three. Connor Hellebuyck first. He played 58 games, 31, 21, and 5 was his win-loss record. His goals against average was 2.57, save percentage of .922, and 6 shutouts. Connor Hellebuyck overcame major defensive loss from last season to this season. You think of the defense that Winnipeg had versus what they have now. He was the busiest goalie in the NHL, faced on average 32 shots a game, and he led all goalies in shutouts. Tuukka Rask played in 41 games this year. That's it. 26, 8, and 6 was his win-loss record. 2.12 goals against average and 929 save percentage, 5 shutouts. He split time with Halak, pretty much 50-50. He's first in goals against average and second in save percentage, and he would join Sergei Bobrovsky as the only active player to win the award twice. And Andrei Vasilevskiy is the last nominee. He played in 52 games, 35, 14, and 3, 2.56 goals against average, .917 save percentage, and 3 shutouts. So he's impressive to be named a finalist since Tampa Bay and himself, like I mentioned before, had a very slow start. It was a down year for him, given the slow start, but don't let that fool you. I personally do not think that he should have been nominated. I think the third should have gone to Carter Hart. Carter Hart is, in my opinion, an up-and-coming goalie. He is the goalie of the future for the NHL, and I think Carter Hart deserved to be nominated this year. Hart had much better numbers than Vasilevskiy did, but I think Vasilevskiy got nominated because his team not only finished with a better record, but of his name. But if anyone who thinks that Connor Hellebuyck doesn't deserve this award is a moron. Sorry, you are. Connor Hellebuyck is the absolute winner of this award. And if you think that's not the case, then you need to either go watch some hockey or just stop talking, period. So next is the Ted Lindsay Award. So this is the MVP as voted by the players. So the 3 nominees are as the same as the Hart, but we'll get into the Hart later. Leon Draisaitl, Nathan MacKinnon, and Artemi Panarin. So I'm going to tell you who I think wins this award, and we're going to move on. And I think the award is going to be given to Leon Draisaitl. And I'm going to tell you why later, because they repeat. The reasons repeat. So rather than telling you twice, I'll tell you once at the end. So next we're going to go on to the Bill Masterton Trophy. And this is the one for just perseverance and dedication to hockey. And the nominees this year are Bobby Ryan from Ottawa, Oscar Lindblom from Philadelphia, and Stephen Johns from Dallas. And again, there is a clear winner, but out of respect to these three guys and respect to everyone who's been nominated, we're going to go over each reason why they were nominated. So let's start with Bobby Ryan. He played in 24 games, 5 goals, 3 assists, 8 points, plus 3. So on November 20th of last year, Bobby was granted a leave of absence, and no one knew why. It was only when he returned that Bobby admitted that he had an addiction to alcohol, and he wanted to work on that for the betterment of him, his wife, and just his career. So Bobby came back on February 27th, 2020, and that game against Vancouver, he netted a hat trick. I remember watching that game and just so overcome with emotion, and it was just one of the best moments in hockey. You know, moving him and the fans and even the players just from both teams just went and just celebrated that he scored a hat trick. Yes, Vancouver probably wasn't happy as occasion, but you still have to think, wow, this guy came back from an alcohol addiction, went to rehab, and he scores a hat trick in his first game back. You know, that was a powerful, powerful statement and powerful message that you can come back to the NHL after battling your demons. And Bobby looked like the old Bobby. Like, we're talking about when he played his final season in Anaheim. That was the last time Bobby Ryan, was he is a very good player. He's been battling this for a while. So this has been, I think, for Bobby, this has been a long time coming, but I'm glad he did it. Next nomination is Oscar Lindblom. Played in 30 games, 11 goals, 7 assists, 18 points, plus 4. So Oscar Lindblom was diagnosed with Ewing's sarcoma, which is a rare form of cancer that occurs in the bones or in the soft tissue around the bones. On July 2nd, Lindblom finished treatments and is training with the team, but is ruled out for the NHL return to play. But he should be good to go next season. If you saw recently, he was assigned for a 3-year extension at $3 million. Overcoming a rare form of cancer it's awesome for anybody. Professional hockey players, professional sports players, anybody. Cancer is just awful, and I never wish it upon anybody, because it can go from one day you can go from being happy, healthy, and then it just turns. So for me, it is Oscar Lindblom. That's the reason why he was nominated, and for me, I'm glad that he is much better, and he got rewarded by his perseverance by getting a 3-year contract extension. Stephen Johns is the last one, or Jones, sorry, not Johns, Jones. So, actually it's Johns. Sorry, I don't know why my computer has Jones, but he played in 17 games, scored 2 goals, 3 assists, 5 points, and was an even rating. Now, a lot of people, including myself, I don't know who Stephen Johns was. So I had to Google and I had to research, and here's the reason why he was nominated, and he deserves it. Anyone who thinks Connor McDavid deserves a nomination to this, before I found out who Stephen Johns was, I agreed. After, I disagree. So Johns was nominated because he was out of the NHL for 22 months, almost 2 years, because he was dealing with post-traumatic headaches. Some thought his career was over. Some thought, he's never going to play another game of hockey. But he did. He returned to the lineup on February 3rd and scored a goal and pointed to his parents in the crowd. Stephen Johns is the epitome of perseverance and dedication to hockey. Unfortunately, if Oscar Lindblom wasn't nominated this year, he would have a shot at winning. But Oscar Lindbaum takes the cake because of his cancer recovery. Yes, this is just a hard trophy to it's a hard trophy to analyze because all three deserve it. I wish the three nominees would all be able to get this, but unfortunately that's not the case. So moving on, we go to the Lady Byng Trophy, which is the most gentlemanlike, or I think basically the one who didn't take the most penalties. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. It's McKinnon, Matthews, and O'Reilly. I think Nathan McKinnon is just going to win this. I'm not going to go into why, because yes, it's an important trophy, yes. But to Leaf fans saying, Austin Matthews deserves this, yeah, I can see it, but I'm sorry, but Nathan McKinnon deserves it much more. So Hart. So it's Draisaitl, McKinnon, and Panarin. So here's Draisaitl's line for this year. 43 goals, 67 assists, 110 points, -7. And it's impressive that he's a -7, and I'll go into why. McDavid with Draisaitl has been on the ice for 33 of his 41 goals, or 43 goals, sorry, and has assisted on 23 of those goals. He was the fastest since Gretzky, another Oiler to be not named Gretzky, to reach 30 points this season. And during a slump in December, Draisaitl was a -24. So he went from -24 to -7 in the matter of 2.5 months. That's pretty crazy. And the second nominee is Nathan McKinnon. 35 goals, 58 assists, 93 points, +13. He was 5th in points in the league, and the next highest scorer in the Avs organization this year was 43 points less than McKinnon. That just goes to show you how valuable McKinnon is to his team. Or it could also mean how well Colorado is, and like how spread out that they are. But we're going to go on to Artemi Panarin, who, if there was an 82-game season this year, would win this trophy. But I'll tell you why. He scored 32 goals, 63 assists, 95 points, and was a +36. He was a league high in 71 points at even strength. He was second in the league on on his team, not in the league, with 56 takeaways behind John Fox. This is the best year of his career. I see many more years like this for Artemi Panarin, but this was the best in his career so far. So who I think is going to win this is the same who wins the Ted Lindsay. It's Draisaitl, because Draisaitl is just... He's so valuable to Edmonton. Without him, it's just the Connor McDavid Oilers. It's not the Edmonton Oilers, it's the Connor McDavid Oilers. So, with that, I think Draisaitl wins. McKinnon will come a close second, and Panarin will come third. Again, if there was an 82-game season, Artemi Panarin would win this award because he was just so valuable to the New York Rangers. So just one last little break, and then we're going to just talk briefly on a new segment. We're going to talk about COVID's effect on sports. And we're going to get into other sports that I didn't talk about in the first episode. So today we're going to be talking about the UFC and Dana White coming up next. So finally, today we're going to be talking about COVID's effect on different sports. Sports you may not think about, or sports that you didn't really think maybe COVID had an effect on. It had an effect on a lot of them. But today we're going to be talking about the UFC. And, when you look at the UFC and Dana White was adamant. Like, he had his foot down to the ground, glued, stapled, whatever you want to call it, to the ground, about the UFC staying on, not stopping. And he had his way, but he also didn't have his way. Because there's a reason why. And it's their sponsor. And their biggest sponsor, the biggest contributor, is ESPN. And who is in control of ESPN? ESPN. It's Disney. You know, the family-friendly company that owns 1 million theme parks, and just the people who own it are just swimming in money baths, Scrooge McDuck like. They own a fight company, or the biggest sponsor in a fight company is Disney. Anyways, so they were their biggest sponsor, and they were telling, for the good and health and safety of the UFC and its members and everybody, to shut down. And they did. They shut down for a couple weeks. And, you know, after things kind of got a bit better in the States, Dana White and ESPN started to become very adamant about restarting. Now, let's just detail a couple recap of the events, and then we're just going to quickly go over if they handled it well or not. So, the biggest thing with UFC is that they tried and tried and tried in the arenas with no fans. And it went well. It went well. Couple events were done, and they went well. High viewership pay-per-views. That's where they get a lot of their money. And, to be honest with you, it was the only form of live sports that some people had. WWE was going on, and they never stopped, and they continued. WWE is the only professional sports league that hasn't stopped. And we're going to talk about them in a future episode. But with UFC, they had to stop. But they eventually were able to restart, and their pay-per-view sales were really good for their events. Now, once they toyed with the notion of starting up and doing it in empty arenas, they had to get through the COVID states. They had to get through the laws surrounding COVID with the states. And Dana White doesn't like that. Dana White likes to keep things smooth and simple. And so he said, we're going to buy an island, and we're going to go to Fight Island. And Fight Island, he was able to get, and it's an island off the United Arab Emirates and mainly in Dubai. And, he's able to get his players in a safe zone. They have to quarantine for 2 weeks, or not players, I don't want to say players, his fighters, in a quarantine place in a safe zone for 2 weeks. And then once they test negative, they'll be able to enter it freely. They'll be able to walk around freely in the free zone, or the safe zone, whatever you want to call it. So, and everything is disinfected. But the cool thing with the UFC is that they have something called the mist tunnels. It sprays the fighters down before they get into a ring, or the octagon, whatever you want to call it. I guess it's an octagon. So it's kind of funny because it doesn't do any good, because as we learned, COVID-19 is not a bacterial thing. It's a viral. It's a virus. It's viral. So you can see how that may not have enough. It would be good because they'd be disinfected, and anything they touch would be fine. But as far as it preventing from spreading through the air, which it does, it doesn't do anything. So with the UFC, after looking in and researching and having my researchers doing a fantastic job with the information with the UFC, they did a good job at the start. But this Fight Island thing, it's a good idea, yes, to have everybody secluded, and it's kind of in a place where you're not going to put the health at risk of the American citizens, or the Dubai citizens, or even the just this is everyone. The only people who could get sick are the fighters themselves. But they did a good job in that regard. But in the other regard, the mist tunnel is a baffling idea. It doesn't make any sense. But if there's one outbreak in the UFC, there's going to be more, because the players, I don't know why I keep saying players, but the fighters in the league, in the league, they are in such close contact with each other. And if once they get free and can go through the safe zone, they can contract it and bring it to another fighter. So in this regard, it's all about money. Money talks, right? So you don't want to lose out on money, and you don't want to lose out on, you don't want to go down. You don't want to go under. So with the UFC, I understand. And if you want more information on the UFC and what it did, I highly recommend that you go watch Last Week Tonight with John Oliver and search UFC. He has so much more information on the topic that I could get into, but I'm not going to, because we're at an hour mark and you guys are probably tired of listening to me speak. So we're just going to take our final quick break. I'll just say a couple final things, and then we'll be done with this episode. So, I appreciate you guys for sticking around and listening to the whole hour. I know it was a long hour. I know it wasn't the best episode as quality and audio. I'm very sorry about that. I know it's been a tough week with me back to work on everything, but I'm not going to use that as an excuse. But we're just going to take a quick break, and we'll just come back with the final thoughts. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Home Turf Podcast. I do want to do a quick shout out to my cousin for the new absolute fantastic logo that they did for me. I love it. I think it's just so simple and so great. I just adore it, and I thank them once again for their contribution that they've made to this podcast. Coming up next week, we're going to have a special guest. We're going to have our first analyst of the team. We're going to have a chat with that analyst. We're not going to tell you who or what we're going to talk about yet, because it's, number one, it's still in the works, and number two, we just want to surprise you guys. So coming up next week, we're going to have an analyst talk to me, and we're going to have a conversation about what's going to happen with blank. That's all I'm going to give you, but that's what we're going to talk about. So thank you so much again for listening. Again, wear a mask, stay safe. Now that things are reopening up here in Canada, be vigilant. We don't want people dying from this disease. Just stay safe, wear a mask, do what the public health authorities tell you. It is not a communist society or a dictatorship. They're doing it to keep the interest of the greater good, and they're trying to keep people safe. The more people we keep safe, and the more people that wear masks, not only the sooner this will end, but the more people we will save. We don't want to lose. We've lost too many people. We've lost over 600,000 people in this world. We don't want to lose any more. So with that, thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you again next week. Thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.